Commander Jake Martinez stepped off the transport ship and onto the surface of Zephyr Prime. The ground beneath his boots felt strange, like walking on glass that bent but never broke. Above him, 3 purple suns hung in a green sky, casting weird shadows that moved in directions that hurt his eyes to follow. The Zephyrians had been waiting for them. Jake could see their tall, thin forms standing near what looked like a mountain made of crystal. But as he got closer, he realized it was not a mountain at all. It was a machine, the biggest machine he had ever seen. "Welcome, human Jake Martinez," said a voice inside his head. The neural translator they had given him was working perfectly. "I am Elder Vex of the High Council. We are pleased that your species has accepted our offer." Jake looked at the alien standing before him. Elder Vex was almost 8 feet tall and looked like he was made of blue light wrapped in skin. His face had no nose, just 2 large black eyes and a mouth that barely moved when he spoke. All the Zephyrians looked the same to Jake, but he was learning to tell them apart by the way their skin glowed. "Thank you for having us," Jake said. He had practiced this moment many times during the long journey from Earth. "We are honored by your offer to share your technology with humanity." The crystal machine behind Elder Vex pulsed with colors that Jake had no names for. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The thing was at least a mile wide and rose up into the sky like a tower that scraped the clouds. Strange symbols moved across its surface like living things, and the air around it seemed to shimmer with heat that Jake could not feel. "This is the quantum resonance matrix," Elder Vex explained. "It is the greatest achievement of our civilization. With it, we can travel between stars in the blink of an eye. Space and time bend to our will when we use this device." Jake whistled low. "That's incredible. How does it work?" Elder Vex's skin grew brighter, which Jake had learned meant the alien was pleased. "Ah, but that is why you are here. We will teach your people to use this technology. It will take many years, of course, perhaps decades. The Matrix is not simply a machine. It is a living extension of our minds and spirits." "Years?" Jake frowned. "We were hoping to learn faster than that." "Impossible," said another Zephyrian, floating closer to them. "I am Scholar Ninth. I have studied the Matrix for 60 of your years, and I am still learning its deepest secrets. The human mind is young and wild. It will take time to develop the discipline needed to commune with such advanced technology." Jake felt a familiar itch at the back of his mind. It was the same feeling he got when someone told him something could not be done. During the Mars Wars, his commanding officers had said it was impossible to take the rebel stronghold, Olympus Base. Jake had done it in 3 days with half the expected casualties. When the fusion reactor at Luna Station had started to fail, the engineers said it would take weeks to fix. Jake had crawled into the reactor core himself and had it running again in 6 hours. "Tell me more about how it works," Jake said. Elder Vex gestured toward the crystal tower. "The Matrix operates on principles that your science is only beginning to understand. It requires perfect harmony between the operator and the quantum field. We spend years learning to meditate, to clear our minds of all distractions, to become one with the cosmic forces that govern space and time. So it reads. Your thoughts? Not exactly. It reads your intent, your spiritual energy, your connection to the universe itself. Every operator must undergo years of training to purify their mind and soul. Only then can they safely interface with the Matrix." Jake walked closer to the machine. The symbols on its surface seemed to pulse faster as he approached. "What happens if someone tries to use it without training?" Scholar Neath's form flickered with what Jake recognized as alarm. "Disaster. The untrained mind cannot handle the quantum feedback. We have lost many promising students to the Matrix's power. Their minds were burned out, their souls scattered across the cosmos." Cheerful, Jake muttered. He looked back at his team, who were setting up their equipment near the transport ship. Lisa Chong was already scanning the crystal tower with every instrument they had brought. Amy Peterson was taking notes on her tablet, while Ryan Clark was trying to figure out how to interface their computers with the alien systems. Your people seem very energetic, Elder Vex observed. We like to stay busy, Jake replied. How long did you say it took you to learn to use this thing? I began my training when I was the equivalent of your 12 years old, Elder Vex said. I achieved my first successful activation when I was 37. I am now over 200 years old, and I still discover new aspects of the Matrix every day. Jake did some quick math in his head. So about 25 years just to get it working once. The Matrix is not something you simply get working, Scholar Neath said, his form flickering with annoyance. It is a sacred trust, a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Each activation is a meditation, a prayer, a communion with forces beyond mortal understanding. Right, Jake said. But at the end of the day, it moves spaceships from one place to another, correct? That is a gross oversimplification, Elder Vex said. The Matrix does not merely move ships. It folds space itself, creating a bridge between distant points in the universe. The calculations alone require understanding of 17 different branches of quantum mathematics. Jake nodded. Lisa loves math. She has 3 degrees in physics from MIT. What is MIT? Asked Scholar Neath. One of our learning institutions. We have many of them. Jake looked back at the crystal tower. So this thing has been working for how long? 3,000 years, Elder Vex said proudly. It was built by the greatest minds of our civilization, working together for centuries. The knowledge required to create it was gathered over millennia of study and contemplation. And in all that time, no one has found a faster way to learn. How to use it? Elder Vex's form went still. There is no faster way. The Matrix requires wisdom, patience, and spiritual development. These cannot be rushed. Your species is known for its impulsiveness, but the Matrix will not respond to haste or shortcuts. Jake smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when his drill sergeant said he would never make it through basic training. The same smile he had when the alien diplomats on Titan said humans were too primitive to join the galactic community. The same smile he had when everyone said faster-than-light travel was impossible right up until humanity figured it out. Elder Vex, he said, I think you are about to learn something very important about human beings. What is that? We really do not like being told that something is impossible. Behind him, Lisa was already calling out readings to Amy, who was furiously typing notes. Ryan had managed to get his tablet to interface with some kind of alien computer system, and was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. With respect to your traditions, Jake continued, I think we might surprise you. Elder Vex's form flickered, with what Jake was beginning to recognize as skepticism. Human Martinez, you do not understand. The Matrix is not a puzzle to be solved or a code to be broken. It is a living entity that must be approached with reverence and humility. We'll see about that, Jake said. Mind if we take a look around? Lisa Chong had always been the kind of person who took things apart to see how they worked. When she was 8, she had dismantled her father's watch and put it back together with improvements. When she was 16, she had built her own computer from spare parts and programmed it to predict stock market trends. Now, at 32, she was standing in front of the most advanced piece of technology in the known galaxy, and her fingers were already itching to get inside it. This is beautiful, she said, running her scanner along the base of the crystal tower. The quantum field density is off the charts, but it's stable. Look at these readings, Amy. Dr. Amy Peterson crowded next to her, studying the numbers on Lisa's tablet. The energy patterns are incredible. It's like the entire structure is one massive quantum computer, but the processing power is distributed throughout the crystal matrix itself. Elder Vex floated nearby, watching the humans with growing concern. Please, you must be careful. The matrix is not a machine to be studied with crude instruments. It is a sacred artifact that requires proper respect and understanding. Oh, we respect it, Lisa said, not looking up from her readings. That's why we want to understand how it works. You can't really respect something if you don't know what it does, right? Ryan Clark had managed to find what looked like a control panel near the base of the tower. It was covered in symbols that shifted and moved like living things, but his tablet was already starting to decode the patterns. Jake, you need to see this. I think I'm starting to understand their interface system. Jake walked over to Ryan, who was grinning at his tablet screen. What do you have? It's like the most complicated video game controller ever made, but the basic logic is sound. See these symbols here? They represent different quantum states. And these ones over here are navigation markers. I think this whole panel is basically a three-dimensional map of local space. Scholar Neath drifted closer, his form flickering with alarm. You cannot possibly understand the control system so quickly. Each symbol represents concepts that take years to fully grasp. The quantum mathematics alone require decades of study. Maybe. For you, Ryan said. But we've been dealing with complex user interfaces since we invented computers. This is just like learning a new programming language, except instead of telling a computer what to do, you're telling spacetime what to do. That is not how the Matrix works, Elder Vex insisted. It is not a computer that follows programmed instructions. It is a living extension of the operator's consciousness. You cannot simply input commands and expect results. Amy looked up from her calculations. Actually, I think you're both right. The Matrix does seem to respond to consciousness, but it's not magic. It's using quantum entanglement between the operator's neural patterns and the crystal matrix. The meditation and spiritual training you do probably helps you achieve the right brainwave patterns to interface with the system. Impossible, Scholar. Neath said, the Matrix requires spiritual purity, not mere brainwave manipulation. Why not both? Lisa asked. Your meditation techniques probably work because they put your brain into specific states that the Matrix can read. But there might be other ways to achieve the same neural patterns. Jake had been listening to his teamwork, and he was starting to get excited. This was how humans solved problems. They did not spend years contemplating the spiritual implications of a screwdriver. They figured out how it worked and then used it to build something better. What do you need to test your theories? He asked. Access to the control interface, Amy said. And maybe some basic information about how the navigation system works. Elder Vex's form went very still. Absolutely not. The Matrix cannot be operated by untrained minds. The risk is too great. What if we start small? Jake suggested. Just diagnostic tests. Nothing that would actually activate the main systems. Even diagnostic access requires months of preparation, Scholar Neath protested. The quantum feedback from the Matrix can overload an unprepared mind in seconds. Ryan was still studying his tablet. The interface system has built-in safety protocols. Look at this code structure. It's designed to prevent accidental activation by inexperienced users. Your ancestors were pretty smart when they built this thing. Of course they were smart, Elder Vex said, but the safety protocols are not foolproof. They require proper understanding to navigate safely. Lisa had been studying the energy patterns flowing through the crystal structure. I think I see what's happening here. The Matrix is constantly running self-diagnostic routines. It's checking its own systems millions of times per second, making tiny adjustments to maintain stability. That's normal for any complex system, Amy added. Our fusion reactors do the same thing. The Matrix is just doing it on a much more advanced level. But don't you see? Scholar Neath said, his form flickering rapidly. The Matrix is not simply a machine. It is a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. It requires understanding of cosmic forces that go beyond mere technology. Jake had heard enough. Elder Vex, I respect your traditions, but I think you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. Yes, the Matrix is incredibly advanced technology, but it's still technology. It follows rules and patterns, just like any other machine. You do not understand, Elder Vex replied. The Matrix is not bound by the same rules as your crude devices. It operates on principles that transcend physical law. Does it? Lisa asked. Because my readings suggest it's following quantum mechanics pretty closely. Advanced quantum mechanics, sure, but still based on the same fundamental principles we understand. Amy was nodding enthusiastically. The quantum field manipulation is sophisticated, but it's not magic. It's using controlled quantum entanglement to create stable wormholes through space-time. The math is incredibly complex, but it's still math. And math is something humans are very good at, Ryan added. We've been using mathematics to solve problems for thousands of years. This is just a really, really big math problem. Elder Vex looked at Scholar Neath, their forms flickering in what Jake recognized as their equivalent of a worried conversation. Finally, Elder Vex spoke. Even if you could understand the mathematics, which I doubt, the Matrix requires perfect mental discipline. One stray thought during operation can cause catastrophic failure. So it's about focus and concentration, Jake said. We can work with that. It is not that simple, Scholar Neath insisted. The operator must achieve perfect harmony with the quantum field. This requires years of meditation and spiritual development. Or really good concentration, Lisa said. I've spent 18-hour days solving quantum equations without a break. If the Matrix needs focused attention, I can give it focused attention. The quantum feedback alone would overwhelm your nervous system, Elder Vex warned. Human minds are not designed to interface directly with quantum fields of this magnitude. Amy had been reading something on her tablet. Actually, human brains are quantum computers themselves. Every neuron operates on quantum principles. We might be more compatible with the Matrix than you think. That's ridiculous, Scholar Neath said. If human brains could interface with the Matrix, why hasn't your species developed similar technology? Because we're only about 50,000 years old as a technological species, Jake replied. You guys have had a 3,000-year head start, but we learn fast. Ryan was still working on the interface system. I think I've figured out the basic navigation protocols. The Matrix creates a quantum map of local space, then calculates the most efficient path between 2 points. It's like GPS, but for hyperspace. It is not GPS, Elder Vex said with exasperation. It is a sacred communion with the forces that govern the cosmos. Same thing, Ryan said with a shrug. You're just using really fancy words to describe three-dimensional navigation. Jake could see that the Zephyrians were getting frustrated, but he could also see that his team was making real progress. Lisa and Amy were already working on equations that would have taken him years to understand. Ryan was mapping out the control systems like he was playing a video game. This was how humans worked. They saw a problem, they attacked it from every angle, and they did not give up until they solved it. Elder Vex, he said, I understand your concerns, but my people have a saying, the best way to learn is by doing. We'd like to try some basic diagnostic tests on the Matrix. Nothing dangerous, just enough to verify our theories. Elder Vex's form dimmed, and if your theories are wrong, if the Matrix overloads your minds or causes a cascade failure in the quantum field, then we'll deal with that when it happens, Jake said. But I don't think we're wrong. My team has never let me down before. This is not like your previous challenges, Scholar Neath warned. The Matrix is beyond anything your species has ever encountered. Jake smiled. Elder Vex, that's exactly the kind of challenge we live for. 2 hours later, Jake stood watching his team work with the kind of focused intensity that had won 3 wars and colonized 4 star systems. Lisa had somehow managed to tap into the Matrix's diagnostic systems and was reading quantum field fluctuations like she was checking the weather. Amy was scribbling equations on her tablet, so fast that her fingers were barely visible. Ryan had not only figured out the basic interface, but was already suggesting improvements to the control layout. This is impossible, Scholar Neath muttered. For the 10th time in the past hour. They cannot be making this kind of progress so quickly. Elder Vex said nothing, but Jake could see the alien's form, flickering with what he was learning to recognize as deep confusion. The Zephyrians had spent their entire civilization developing complex, philosophical, and spiritual frameworks around their technology. The idea that someone could simply walk up and start figuring it out through trial and error was clearly breaking their understanding of how the universe worked. Jake, you need to see this, Lisa called out. She was standing next to a section of the crystal tower that was glowing brighter than the rest. I've isolated the main quantum processing core. The energy patterns are incredible, but they're following a mathematical sequence that I recognize. Jake walked over to her. What kind of sequence? Fibonacci, but in 17 dimensions instead of 2. The Matrix is using natural mathematical patterns to organize quantum information. It's like the universe's own programming language. Amy looked up from her tablet. That makes perfect sense. If you're manipulating space-time directly, you'd want to use the same mathematical principles that govern natural quantum systems. It's elegant, really. But how are you reading the quantum patterns? Elder Vex asked. Without proper training, the quantum feedback should be overwhelming your nervous systems. We're not reading them directly, Lisa explained. We're using our instruments to translate the quantum information into formats we can understand. It's like using a telescope to look at stars instead of trying to see them with the naked eye. That's cheating, Scholar Neath said. That's engineering, Ryan replied. Why make things harder than they need to be? Jake had to admit he was impressed. In just 2 hours, his team had accomplished what the Zephyrian said should take months of preparation. But he also knew they were just getting started. Understanding the Matrix was one thing. Actually using it was something else entirely. How close are we to attempting a test activation? He asked. Amy and Lisa exchanged glances. Theoretically, we could try a low-power diagnostic sequence right now, Amy said. The math checks out, and the safety protocols are clear. Absolutely. Not, Elder Vex said, his form blazing with alarm. You cannot activate the Matrix without proper spiritual preparation. The quantum feedback alone could kill you. What if we start with something really small? Jake suggested. Not transportation, just a basic quantum field manipulation. Enough to verify that our understanding is correct. The Matrix is not a toy, Scholar Neath warned. Even the smallest activation creates ripples in space-time that can have unpredictable consequences. Everything has consequences, Jake said. But we're not going to learn anything by standing here talking about it. Lisa was already moving toward the control interface. I can set up a level 1 diagnostic sequence. It's designed to test the quantum field generators without creating any actual space-time distortions. How do you know about diagnostic sequences? Elder Vex asked. It's all in the interface code, Ryan explained. Your ancestors built in comprehensive testing protocols. We just had to figure out how to access them. Jake watched as Lisa began interacting with the control panel. The symbols on the crystal surface began to shift and change, reorganizing themselves into new patterns. The change was subtle, but Jake could feel something different in the air around them. It was like the moment before a thunderstorm, when the atmosphere itself seemed to hold its breath. Quantum field generators are responding, Lisa reported. Energy levels are stable. All safety protocols are green. This is remarkable, Amy said, watching the readings on her tablet. The Matrix is actually communicating with our instruments. It's like it wants to be understood. Of course it does. Jake said, it's a machine designed to be operated. Why would it want to stay mysterious? Elder Vex's form had gone very still. Because the Matrix is not simply a machine, human Martinez. It is a living extension of our consciousness, a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Maybe, Jake said, but it's also a very sophisticated piece of technology that wants to work properly. And sometimes the best way to understand something is to use it. Lisa had moved on to more complex diagnostic sequences. The crystal tower was now pulsing with rhythmic patterns of light that seemed to dance in harmony with her movements at the EMP. Control interface. I'm reading quantum coherence across all 17 processing cores. The Matrix is fully functional and ready for operation. Ready for operation? Scholar Neith's form flickered with panic. You cannot possibly be ready for operation. You have had no training, no preparation, no spiritual development. We've had 2 hours of intensive study, Ryan said. That's more than enough time to understand the basic principles. 2 hours versus 25 years, Jake mused. I think we're making pretty good time. Amy was studying the quantum field. Readings with growing excitement. Jake, I think we could actually attempt a short-range transportation test. The math is solid, and the safety protocols are comprehensive. How short-range are we talking about? Just to the other side of the planet and back. Maybe a 10-minute round trip. Elder Vex's form blazed with alarm. You want to attempt interplanetary transportation after 2 hours of study? This is madness. This is science, Lisa corrected. We've analyzed the systems, we understand the principles, and we verified that the safety protocols are active. There's no reason why it shouldn't work. No reason except that you have no training, no experience, and no understanding of the spiritual requirements, Scholar Neith said. What spiritual requirements? Jake asked. You keep talking about spiritual development, but what does that actually mean in practical terms? Elder Vex paused, his form flickering as he considered the question. The operator must achieve perfect harmony with the quantum field. This requires clearing the mind of all distractions, achieving a state of perfect calm and focus. So concentration and mental discipline, Amy said. We can do that. It is not that simple, Scholar Neith insisted. The Matrix requires understanding of cosmic forces that go beyond mere mental focus. Like what? Ryan asked. The interconnectedness of all things, the flow of quantum energy through the universe, the spiritual significance of manipulating space-time. Itself, Jake nodded. Okay, but at the end of the day, what does the Matrix actually need from the operator? What specific mental state or brainwave pattern or whatever? Elder Vex was quiet for a long moment. Perfect focus on the intended destination, clear visualization of the quantum path, and complete confidence in the operation. That's it, Lisa asked. Focus, visualization, and confidence? And spiritual harmony with the cosmic forces, Scholar Neith added quickly. Which probably just means staying calm and not panicking, Amy said. Basic stress management. Jake was starting to understand. The Zephyrians had built up elaborate philosophical frameworks around their technology, but underneath all the spiritual language, the Matrix probably just needed an operator who could stay focused and follow directions. The meditation and spiritual training were probably just ways to achieve the right mental state for operating such a complex system. I think we're ready to try, he said. Ready to try what? Elder Vex asked. though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. A test run. Nothing fancy, just a quick jump to verify that our understanding is correct. This is incredibly dangerous, Scholar Neath warned. Without proper preparation, you could be lost in hyperspace or worse. We could also succeed, Jake pointed out. And if we do, we'll have learned something important about how the Matrix really works. Lisa had finished her preparations at the control interface. All systems are green. The quantum field is stable, and the navigation computer has calculated a safe path to the target coordinates. What target coordinates? Elder Vex asked. The fourth planet in this system, Amy replied. It's uninhabited, and the quantum disturbance will be minimal. That's 47 light years from here, Scholar Neath said. 47.3, Lisa corrected. But the Matrix should be able to handle that easily. Jake looked at his team. They were ready. He could see it in their faces, the same expression they had worn when they figured out faster-than-light travel, when they solved the fusion reactor. Crisis, when they did a dozen other things that everyone said were impossible. Let's do it, he said. Elder Vex's form went completely still. Human Martinez, I must protest in the strongest possible terms. What you are attempting is not just dangerous, it is impossible. The Matrix will not respond to untrained minds. We'll see about that, Jake said. Lisa, initiate the sequence. Lisa's hands moved across the control interface with practiced precision. The crystal tower began to hum, with a sound that seemed to come from inside Jake's bones. The air around them shimmered and bent, and suddenly the world dissolved into light and impossibility. They were somewhere else. Jake's first thought was that the universe had turned inside out. His second thought was that he was still alive, which was honestly more than he had expected. His third thought was that the red dwarf star hanging in the alien sky was absolutely beautiful. Holy cow, Ryan breathed, staring at the barren landscape around them. We actually did it. They were standing on a rocky plateau under a crimson sky. The air was thin but breathable, and the gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal. In the distance, Jake could see mountains that looked like they were made of black glass, and the red star above them cast everything in shades of bronze and copper. Position confirmed, Lisa announced, checking her instruments. We are exactly where we intended to be. The quantum positioning system is more accurate than anything we have back home. Amy was practically bouncing with excitement. The transition was perfect. No turbulence, no disorientation, no side effects at all. This is incredible technology. Jake looked around for the Zephyrians and found them standing very still about 20 feet away. Elder Vex and Scholar Neath were both staring at the human team with expressions that Jake was starting to recognize as complete shock. Are you all right? He asked. We are alive, Elder Vex said slowly, which is more than I expected. Why wouldn't we be alive? Lisa asked. All the safety protocols were active. The quantum field was stable throughout the entire transition. Because what you just did should have been impossible, Scholar Neath said. You operated the Matrix without any training, without any spiritual preparation, without any understanding of the cosmic forces involved. We understood the forces just fine, Amy said. Quantum mechanics is quantum mechanics, whether you're manipulating particles in a lab or folding space-time with a crystalline matrix. But the spiritual requirements, Elder Vex protested, the years of meditation and contemplation necessary to achieve harmony with the quantum field. Maybe that's just one way to achieve the right mental state, Jake suggested. We used a different approach, but we got the same result. This cannot be, Scholar Neath said. The Matrix requires spiritual purity, cosmic awareness, philosophical understanding of the nature of existence itself. Or it requires an operator who can stay focused and follow directions, Ryan said, which is basically what we do for a living. Jake had to admit that the transition had been smoother than he expected. He had been prepared for anything from total system failure to being scattered across 17 dimensions, but the actual experience had been almost anticlimactic. One moment they were standing on Zephyr Prime. The next moment they were standing on a planet 47 light years away. It was like stepping through a door, except the door led to another star system. How long did that take? He asked. Transition time was 3.7 seconds, Lisa reported. Total elapsed time from activation to arrival was less than 5 seconds. 5 seconds to travel 47 light years, Amy mused. That's approximately 250 million times the speed of light. The energy requirements alone should have been astronomical. The matrix does not move through space, Elder Vex explained. It creates a quantum bridge between two points in spacetime. The energy requirements are actually quite modest because you are not accelerating mass across distance. That's brilliant, Jake said. Instead of moving the ship, you move the space around the ship. Essentially, yes. But the calculations required to create a stable quantum bridge are incredibly complex. A single error can result in catastrophic failure. So you need really good computers and really good math, Ryan said. We have both. Scholar Neith's form was flickering rapidly. You speak of the Matrix as if it were a simple machine, but it is so much more. It is a living expression of our civilization's greatest achievements, a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. It's also a very sophisticated piece of technology, Lisa said. Those aren't mutually exclusive concepts. Jake was starting to understand the cultural gap they were dealing with. The Zephyrians had built their entire relationship with the Matrix around spiritual and philosophical concepts. They saw it as a sacred artifact that required years of mental and spiritual development to operate safely. Humans saw it as an incredibly advanced machine that could be understood and operated through careful study and practical application. The important thing is that it works, he said. And now we know that our approach can work too. This changes everything, Elder Vex said quietly. If humans can operate the Matrix without traditional training, then everything we thought we knew about the requirements for quantum field manipulation is wrong. Not wrong, Amy corrected, just incomplete. Your approach works, but it's not the only approach that works. How is this possible? Scholar Neith asked. How can you achieve in hours what takes us years to accomplish? Different learning styles. Jake said, you learn through contemplation and spiritual development. We learn through experimentation and practical application. Both methods can reach the same destination. But the risks, Elder Vex protested, without proper preparation. The quantum feedback could have destroyed your minds. We took precautions, Lisa said. We started with diagnostic sequences. We monitored all the safety protocols, and we made sure we understood the basic principles before attempting anything dangerous. That's not the same as spiritual preparation, Scholar Knife insisted. Maybe. Not, Jake said, but it was enough to get the job done. Amy was studying the quantum field readings on her tablet. Actually, I think our approach might have some advantages. Because we're not trying to achieve perfect spiritual harmony, we're not limited by the same mental constraints. We can think about the Matrix as a tool to be optimized rather than a sacred artifact to be revered. What do you mean? Elder Vex asked. Well, for instance, I've been analyzing the energy efficiency of the quantum field generators. I think we could improve the power consumption by about 30% with some minor modifications to the field harmonics. Modifications? Scholar Neith's form blazed with alarm. You cannot modify the Matrix. It is a perfect expression of cosmic harmony. Nothing is perfect, Ryan said. Everything can be improved. That's the whole point of engineering. The Matrix has operated flawlessly for 3,000 years, Elder Vex said, which is impressive. Jake admitted. But that doesn't mean it can't be made better. Lisa was taking readings from the quantum field generators. The crystalline matrix is incredibly sophisticated, but the control systems are actually somewhat inefficient. A lot of the spiritual training you require is probably just compensating for interface limitations. Interface limitations? Scholar, Neith asked. The control system is designed to respond to very specific mental states, Amy explained. But those mental states aren't necessarily the most efficient way to operate the matrix. They're just the way the original designers programmed it to work. So you could potentially redesign the interface to be more user-friendly, Jake said. Exactly. Instead of requiring years of meditation to achieve the right brainwave patterns, we could design an interface that works with normal human thought processes. Elder Vex was quiet for a long moment. This is a fundamental challenge to everything we believe about the nature of consciousness and technology. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Jake suggested. Sometimes old beliefs need to be challenged. But our entire civilization is built around the spiritual significance of the Matrix, Scholar Knight said. If it is just a machine that can be operated by anyone, then what does that mean for our culture? It means your culture can evolve, Amy said. You can keep the spiritual aspects that are important to you while also embracing new ways of understanding the technology. Jake nodded. The Matrix doesn't have to be less meaningful just because it's easier to operate. If anything, making it more accessible could spread its benefits to more people. But the years of training, the spiritual development, the philosophical understanding, Elder Vex said. Are you saying all of that was unnecessary? Not unnecessary, Lisa said. Just not the only way. Your approach creates operators who have deep understanding and spiritual connection to the technology. Our approach creates operators who can use the technology quickly and efficiently. Both have value. We could combine the approaches, Ryan suggested. Quick training to get people operational, then deeper study for those who want to understand the philosophical implications. Scholar Neith's form was flickering rapidly. This is all happening too quickly. We need time to consider the implications. We don't have to decide everything right now, Jake said. But we should probably head back to Zephyr Prime. We've been here for almost 10 minutes, and I'm sure people are wondering if we're still alive. The return journey should be even easier, Amy said. We know the Matrix is working properly, and we have a confirmed lock on our departure coordinates. Lisa was already moving toward the control interface. Navigation computer has our return path calculated. All systems are green for immediate departure. Wait, Elder Vex said. Before we return, I must ask, how did you know it would work? How are you so confident that you could operate the Matrix successfully? Jake. By lunchtime, everything had changed. Jake sat in with the Zephyrians, called a meditation garden, eating something that tasted like chicken, but looked like purple jelly, while his team completely revolutionized 3,000 years of technological tradition. Lisa and Amy had set up their equipment near the Matrix and were running optimization tests that made the ancient crystal tower hum with new frequencies. Ryan was working with a group of young Zephyrian technicians, showing them how to create user interfaces that didn't require decades of spiritual training to understand. The efficiency improvements are remarkable, Elder Vex said, his form flickering with what Jake had learned was amazement. In just 4 hours, your people have increased the Matrix's performance by 40%. And reduced power consumption by half, Amy added, not looking up from her calculations. The original design was beautiful, but it was also incredibly wasteful. All that spiritual training was basically teaching people to work around inefficiencies. In the control system, Scholar Knight floated nearby, watching the humans work with an expression that Jake couldn't quite read. This challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between consciousness and technology. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Jake said. Sometimes old ideas need to be challenged. But our entire educational system is based on a belief that advanced technology requires advanced spiritual development, Elder Vex said. If that is not true, then we have been doing things wrong for millennia. Not wrong, Lisa said, finally looking up from her work. Just inefficient. Your approach works. It just takes a really long time. And there's value in taking time to understand something deeply. But there's also value in being able to solve problems quickly when you need to, Ryan added. He was showing a young Zephyrian how to use a tablet interface to control the Matrix's diagnostic systems. Look at this. Instead of spending months learning to achieve the right mental state, you can just use this interface to tell the Matrix what you want it to do. The young Zephyrian, who had introduced himself as Student Kel, was staring at the tablet with wide eyes. This is incredible. I can access systems that I was told would take years to understand. That's the point, Ryan said. Technology should make things easier, not harder. Scholar Neith's form flickered with concern. But what about the spiritual growth that comes from years of study? The wisdom that develops through contemplation and meditation? That's still valuable, Amy said. But it doesn't have to be a prerequisite for using the technology. You can learn to operate the Matrix quickly, and then spend as much time as you want studying the deeper implications. Jake had been thinking about this problem all morning. The Zephyrians weren't wrong about the value of their traditional approach. Spending years studying something did create a deeper understanding and a more spiritual connection to the technology. But it also meant that only a tiny fraction of their population could ever learn to use their most advanced systems. What if we created a hybrid approach, he suggested. Quick training for basic operation, and then advanced training for people who want to become true experts. Elder Vex's form brightened. You mean teach the technical skills quickly, but preserve the spiritual and philosophical aspects for those who wish to pursue them? Exactly. That way you get the benefits of both approaches. More people can use the technology when they need it, but you still maintain the deeper traditions for those who value them. Student Kel looked up from the tablet he was working with. Elder Vex, this makes sense. I have been studying the meditation techniques for 5 years, but I learned more about the Matrix's actual operation in the past hour than in all my previous training. But what about the spiritual significance? Scholar Neith asked. The connection between consciousness and cosmic forces? That's still there, Amy said. We're just approaching it from a different angle. Instead of spending years learning to commune with the Matrix spiritually, we can start by understanding how it works technically, and then develop the spiritual connection over time. Lisa had been working on something while they talked, and now she looked up with excitement. I think I've figured out something interesting. The Matrix isn't just a transportation device. The quantum field manipulation system could be adapted for all kinds of applications. What kind of applications? Elder Vex asked. Medical scanning, materials engineering, communications, power generation. The basic technology could revolutionize dozens of different fields. That's impossible, Scholar Neff said automatically, then paused. Actually, given what I have seen today, perhaps nothing is impossible. Jake grinned. Now you're getting the hang of it. Ryan had been working with Student Kel and several other young Zephyrians, and now he called out to the group. Hey, you. Guys need to see this. Kel just figured out how to interface the Matrix with their planetary communication network. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means we can use the quantum field to create instantaneous communication links across interstellar distances. Student Kel explained excitedly. No more waiting months for messages to travel between star systems. Elder Vex's form went fairy. Still, instantaneous interstellar communication? That would change everything. Everything changes anyway, Jake said. The question is whether you want to be part of directing that change or just reacting to it. Amy had been studying the quantum field patterns on her tablet. There's something else. The Matrix's quantum manipulation capabilities could be scaled down and adapted for smaller applications. We could potentially create personal transportation, devices or quantum computers that fit in your pocket. Portable quantum technology, Scholar Neth mused. Available to anyone who needs it, not just those who have spent decades in training. That's the idea, Lisa said. Technology should serve people, not the other way around. Elder Vex floated closer to Jake. Human Martinez, what you are proposing would fundamentally transform our civilization. Are you certain this is wise? Jake thought about all the times in human history when someone had asked that exact question. When they invented agriculture, when they developed writing, when they created computers, when they figured out faster-than-light travel. Progress was always scary because it meant leaving behind familiar ways of doing things. I'm not certain of anything, he said honestly, but I'm certain that standing still is worse than moving forward, even if you don't know exactly where you're going. And if we make mistakes, then we fix them. That's what humans do. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and we try again. Student Kell had been listening to the conversation while working with Ryan on the communication system. Elder Vex, perhaps the humans are right. Our ancestors built the Matrix to serve our civilization. If we can make it serve our civilization better, shouldn't we do that? But the traditions, the spiritual significance, the philosophical frameworks, we have built around the technology, Scholar Neath said. Don't have to disappear, Amy said. They can evolve alongside the technology. The Matrix can be both a sacred artifact and a practical tool. Those aren't mutually exclusive concepts. Lisa looked up from her work. Actually, I think making the technology more accessible might increase its spiritual significance, not decrease it. If more people can experience the wonder of quantum field manipulation, more people will develop their own spiritual connections to it. Different connections than ours, Elder Vex said. Different isn't bad, Jake said. Diversity of thought leads to innovation. Ryan had finished his work with the communication system and was now helping student Cal design improvements to the Matrix's user interface. The beautiful thing about good technology is that it enables creativity. When you make tools easier to use, people find new ways to use them that you never imagined. What new ways? Scholar Neath asked. That's the point, Jake said. We don't know yet, but we'll figure it out as we go. Elder Vex was quiet for a long moment, his form flickering with what Jake recognized as deep thought. This is perhaps the most significant decision our civilization has faced in millennia. The choice between preserving our traditional ways and embracing a completely new approach to technology and learning. It doesn't have to be a choice between one or the other, Amy said. It can be a choice to include both approaches. A synthesis of human pragmatism and Zephyrian wisdom, Student Kell suggested. I like that, Jake said. The best of both worlds. Scholar Neath's form gradually brightened. Perhaps there is wisdom in this approach. We have much to learn from each other. Now you're talking, Jake said. So, what other impossible technologies do you have that could use a fresh perspective? Elder Vex's form flickered with what Jake was now certain was amusement. Perhaps we should discuss that over what you call lunch. I believe you mentioned something about being hungry. Jake grinned. Best idea I've heard all day? As they walked toward the Zephyrian equivalent of a cafeteria, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. In less than 12 hours, they had not only mastered technology that was supposed to take years to learn, but they had also started a cultural exchange that would probably reshape both civilizations. It was, he thought, a pretty good day's work. And they still had time for dessert.